Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Medisodes. Today we're going to be talking about colour blindness. Imagine a world where the grass is not green but red. This is the reality for millions of people living with colour blindness. Colour blindness is a sex-linked hereditary genetic condition with a rather misleading name. Complete colour blindness, known as monochromacy, is extremely rare, affecting only 1 in 33,000 people. Most people who have colour blindness, such as myself, can still see colours. They just find it difficult to identify and differentiate between certain colours. The condition should more accurately be described as colour vision deficiency, but this just isn't as catchy as colour blindness. So I mentioned that colour blindness is a sex-linked hereditary condition. So let's go on to Anupam to see how colour blindness is inherited.
So now let's talk about how colour blindness is inherited, because colour blindness is inherently a genetic condition. It affects 1 in 12 men, but only 1 in 200 women. And this really stark difference is caused due to the way colour blindness is inherited. Colour blindness is caused by faulty or absent cones or faulty optic nerves, and the genes responsible for these parts of the body are found on the sex chromosomes, specifically the X sex chromosome. While women will have 2 X sex chromosomes, 1 from each of their parents, men only inherit 1 from their mother, as their second sex chromosome is a Y chromosome from their father. And since colour blindness is a recessive condition, women need to inherit 2 alleles for colour blindness from both parents to be colourblind, whereas men only need to inherit the alleles from their mother. This means only women can be carriers for colour blindness. If a man has the chromosome for colour blindness, they will always be a sufferer from the condition. And therefore, they are far more likely to be colourblind, because for them to have the condition, they have a much higher chance of having it from their parents. It is also important to note that colour blindness can also be acquired later in life due to underlying health conditions such as diabetes, multiple sclerosis, or glaucoma, as well as exposure to certain toxic chemicals. However, in the vast majority of cases, colourblind people will have inherited the condition genetically from their parents. Now, I've been using colour blindness as a general term, but as Shrey mentioned earlier, there are many different types of colour blindness. To talk more about those is Adrian.
So, colour blindness is an umbrella term used to refer to several types of colour blindness. There are 7 official types of colour blindness, 4 within the red-green category, 2 in the blue-yellow category, and 1 that completely lacks colour. Human eyes contain 2 types of photoreceptor, rods and cones, named after their shape. Rods are highly light sensitive. They allow for eyesight to adjust in the darkness and help with basic vision. There are 18 times more rods than cones in the eye. Cones are what give us fine detail and colour and work best in bright light, hence why it's harder to see colour when it's darker. All types of colour blindness are due to a lack of or dysfunctional cones. The human eye contains 3 different types of cones. S cones, short wavelength cones, help us see blue. M cones, medium wavelength cones, reveal green. And L cones, long wavelength cones, interpret red light. The absence of any of these 3 types of cones is what accounts for different types of colour blindness. Most people who have trouble seeing various spectrums of light have what is called inherited colour blindness. The genes that code for this correct cone function, which are passed down from their parents, have an error. This is why colour blindness tends to run in families, as Anupam has just discussed. The most common types of colour blindness in humans fall under the heading of anomalous trichromacy. That is to say that one of the 3 cone types, red, green or blue, in the individual's eyes isn't functioning as expected. The types of red-green colour blindness fall into 4 different categories. Protanopia, also known as red blind, means that individuals have no red cones. Protanomaly, also known as red weak, means that individuals have red cones and can usually see some shades of red. Deuteranopia, also known as green blind, means that individuals have no green cones. And deuteranomaly, also known as green weak, individuals have green cones and can usually see some shades of green. Ultimately, the different types of red-green color blindness all result in the individual seeing a world the rest of us would describe as murky green with hints of blue and yellow. Browns, oranges, and reds are easily confused, and pale shades in general are difficult to distinguish. Blue-yellow color blindness is less common. The two types of color blindness in this category both make it difficult to tell the difference between blue and green, as well as yellow and red. There are two types of blue-yellow color blindness. Tritanopia, also known as blue blind, which means that individuals have no blue cones, and tritanomaly, also known as blue weak, which means that individuals have blue cones and can usually see some shades of blue. All 6 of these types of color blindness stem from one of 3 cone types not functioning to some degree. Though people with anomalous trichromacy may have trouble selecting ripe fruit or reading traffic lights, most colorblind people adapt to live normal lives, as Shrey will talk about later. Monochromacy, on the other hand, can be quite challenging. People with monochromacy see no color at all. For these individuals, the world exists in black and white, much like an old-time television. The concomitant light sensitivity often transforms everyday tasks into difficult chores. It's also interesting to note that some women actually have a 4th type of light-absorbing cone. As many as 12% of women may have supercolor vision, the 4th cone allowing them to see 100 times more colors than the rest of the population. Color vision tests do not usually form part of the routine NHS eye tests, but you can specifically ask for them if you have a concern that you may have a color vision deficiency. 2 of the main tests used to diagnose color vision deficiency are the Ishihara test, where you're asked to identify numbers contained within images made out of different colored dots, and color arrangement tests, where you're asked to arrange colored objects in order of their different shades. There are also a number of online tests using similar techniques that may help detect a possible problem, but it's best to have a proper test at an optician's if you have any concerns about color vision. The Ishihara test consists of a number of Ishihara plates, which are a set of colored dots that appear random in size and color. However, within the plates, there are dots that form a number or shape clearly visible to those with normal color vision, but are difficult to see to those with a red-green color defect. Some other plates are designed so that the numbers are visible only to those with a red-green colorblind defect, and not visible to those with normal color vision. This allows for the identification of red-green color blindness, and also allows for the identification of the extent of its case. This helps with future treatment options and allows for the optician to advise the patient on how to best manage and live with their colorblindness. And for this, I'll hand over to Shrey.
The severity and effect of color blindness on a person's daily life can vary massively from person to person, even if they have the same type of color blindness. For example, a deuteran, someone with deuteranomaly, may have almost normal color vision, or they could be completely unable to see green, depending on how severe the effect on depending on how severely their cones are affected. A common and obvious problem is traffic lights. Many colorblind drivers may not be able to differentiate between the colors, so rely on the position of the lights, whether the top, middle, or bottom light is turned on, in order to know where to stop or go. Although in most countries, it's still legal to drive even if you're colorblind, and it's an exemption that's given by the DVLA when you apply for your driving license. A similar problem occurs with safety warnings and signs. Red warning lights may be perceived as green, and therefore a colorblind person may not realize that they are in danger. Having symbols and writing, as well as colors, are incredibly important in making sure that everyone is safe. Another hazard is cooking. Cooking can be tricky even for people lucky enough to have normal color vision, but it's even more challenging for those who cannot recognize color changes, especially when cooking meat. Colorblind people tend to play it safe and overcook food. However, the greatest challenge lies in the classroom. In primary school, colouring pencils with the colours labelled on them saved me the ignominy of having to ask the teacher what colour they were. Teachers and support staff need to have training so they know how to adapt their lessons to be as inclusive as possible. There are likely to be many people who are colourblind within a class. Some of them might not even know. 40% of colourblind people leaving secondary school don't know they're colourblind. This can have terrible consequences for their mental health. Certain careers are impossible for those who are colourblind, such as being a pilot. Imagine if you had passed all the tests to pursue your dream of becoming a pilot, only to be told at the last step you couldn't get your license because you failed the medical due to your colour vision. Happily, for me and the 300 million people colourblind worldwide, technology is making daily life a bit easier. There are now apps that can identify colours for you using your phone's camera. All you need to do is point your camera at the item and you will be able to identify it will identify the colour for you. This is especially useful when trying to buy fruits in the supermarket to check that they are ripe. There are also increasingly colourblind modes on apps, websites and games and devices, and these are becoming increasingly common as companies realise that a significant proportion of their customers perceive colour differently. So we've talked a bit about the challenges of living with colour blindness, but let's look into how it can be treated.
Colour blindness is very hard to treat due to the fact that it is a hereditary genetic condition. Currently, the best solutions to treat colour blindness are known as tinted lenses. They block certain wavelengths of light where the spectra of the cones overlap with the use of rare earth metals. Using this concept, the lenses make it easier for colourblind people to differentiate between different colours. The inventor of the lenses originally designed them to be for doctors performing laser eye surgery, but when he gave one of the lenses to his colourblind friend, the lens's potential to help colourblind individuals was discovered. However, these tinted lenses are not the perfect solution to colour blindness and do not work for all colourblind individuals. One of their biggest limitations is that they only work for people who have red-green colour blindness. Although this is the most common type of colour blindness, it does not offer a solution to help people with other types of colour blindness, such as blue-yellow colour blindness and complete colour blindness. Another limitation with tinted lenses is that Another limitation with tinted lenses is that they do not restore normal colour vision. Instead, they make colours more vivid. Tinted lenses can be part of glasses or contact lenses. As mentioned previously by Shrey, visual aids are also a possible solution that might help colorblind individuals recognize colors, for example, by using apps on your phone. There are also a few things that colorblind people can do to remember what color certain things are. So as mentioned previously, remembering the order of colors in a sequence is really important, for example, in identifying traffic lights. Another tip is to label colored items, and this can be useful when you're deciding what color combinations to wear in terms of clothing. And labeling items with their colors can allow colorblind people to make their own fashion choices. Looking at potential future treatments for colorblindness, we can look towards gene editing technologies such as CRISPR. In the future, it may be possible to cure colorblindness with gene replacement, providing a long-term treatment for colorblindness. So even though there is no cure for colorblindness currently, hopefully these treatments and tips can be implemented by colorblind people to manage daily tasks and wishes. As technology improves, better colorblind treatments can be offered.
So we've seen that colorblindness is a varying condition depending on the person, but also a very widespread one. Given that it's one of the most common genetic conditions, why do you think more people don't know about how colorblindness works?
I think that one key thing about colorblindness is that it's not a very visible condition. So you can't tell just by looking at someone that they have colorblindness. And while it is a big part of how a lot of colorblind people have to live their lives and affects them a lot, in most cases, it doesn't hugely affect most of their day-to-day interactions with other people. And I think a lot of people just believe that it's not really a problem in the 21st century, which is why it doesn't really get brought up that much, even though it affects so many people.
And what's more, they can't really compare their vision to what normal vision is. And there's no such test that would allow them to do that, because whatever they see is color vision deficient. So there's no easy way for them to see if they do have color blindness, and they have to book tests. And oftentimes people won't book tests if they aren't suspicious of potential color blindness. So this means that because people are less aware, they're not going to be booking as many tests or booking the tests that they need to identify their color blindness. So they just end up living with it and not knowing.
Well, I think that the lack of early screening programs for identifying color blindness is another potential factor why they might not be like color blindness might not be identified in like the early stages of life. So I think that having screening tests for people who have color blindness running in their family would be really useful for identifying people with color blindness.
Yes, I think we raised an important point that really, ideally, all children should be tested for color blindness because it'll save them a lot of pain later in life. But apart from this, do you feel more could be done to help to adapt to the needs of colorblind people?
Well, as mentioned earlier, when it came to the examples of crayons, labeling things is a great way to help colorblind people understand what something is. And while color coding things is useful for people who have normal vision, I think we need to be careful that things aren't assumed to be understood just because they're color coded, especially in the case when you're dealing with colorblind people.
So we've seen that color blindness is a condition that many sufferers are unaware that they even have. Children struggle through school thinking they're stupid because they keep getting their colors mixed up. And teachers don't know this and just assume that they don't know their colors. Everyone knows someone who is colorblind. So why doesn't everyone know what colorblindness is? I hope we've helped you to understand this condition, which affects 3 million people in the UK. And hopefully you'll have greater sympathy for us colorblind folk. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.